This is Dr. Marcia here, your friendly neighborhood physical therapist, certified yoga teacher, and author of Movement for Everybody. So this is my podcast. Real quick, I'll give you some land acknowledgement and a visual description before our guests introduce ourselves, because there's a whole other person here, right? I'm sitting on Powhatan Chickahominy land. I'm a black femme sitting in front of an orange-ish curtain here. I got my Pink Beats headphones. I got my dreads and two pigtails, and I'm ready to party. So that's the vibe. Those are for our folks that might be joining us on the audio version and want a little visual description. And I'll let my guest introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Laura Girard. I'm a certified personal trainer. I am the founder and owner of the Energy Academy, which is an online fitness membership. And I'm very excited to be here with my friend Dr. Marcia. I am wearing oh gosh, my color knowledge is failing me. It's sort of a taupe beige little zip up hoodie. I'm sitting in my office in front of a white wall. And I'm currently on Lenape land. So I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm so excited to have you. Thanks for joining us. So I would very much like the folks to know briefly your background. Like, who are you? What have you been doing? How do you move your body? Like, give me the elevator 2-second pitch.
Love. Okay, well, I don't think I'm capable of that, but I can do like a 30-second.
Time is running out.
Yes, let's always. We've got about 2 years left. We're cooked. So I got to start getting better at my elevator pitch. But here's my brief abridged movement history is that I've been a dancer my whole life. I started in classical ballet at age 3. I did that all growing up, and then I eventually also fell in love with musical theater. So that started to take time away from ballet. I went to college for musical theater, moved to New York City right out of college, like a week after graduation. Was auditioning in the city as an actor, and
Ooh.
fitness it went from being my hobby to being my day job, working in boutique fitness in Manhattan, teaching very scary, sexy, exclusive classes, which I hated. And I found my own little community of people who would come specifically to my classes because they knew I wasn't going to yell at them about,
Oof.
oh, it's bikini season, or that you were doing this so we can have mimosas at brunch. That's just never been my vibe past the age of 17. So I was doing that. I became a certified personal trainer, started taking on private clients. And then when the pandemic hit in March 2020, it was the right time, meaning I was jobless and inside. It was the right circumstances to branch out on my own online. I started a very small informal group coaching program that was meant to last 2 weeks, and over many iterations that has evolved into the Energy Academy, which is what is my full-time job now, strength training people all over the world through their Zoom screen. So my favorite ways to move my body are lifting weights. That's always been sort of the antithesis to ballet, which is kind of how I fell in love with it. It was a really out of left field thing for me to experience, and I'm sure we'll dive more into that, so I will try to be short-winded here. But I love dancing still. I've fallen back in love with dancing, even ballet. I love yoga. I don't do enough of it, and I like really long walks. Those are probably my favorites.
Long walks on the beach?
On the beach, on the street, in the park. After dark with a fox.
Okay, Dr. Seuss, calm down. All right, Dr. Seuss. It's funny because I actually assumed that your personal training stuff and whatnot started because of the pandemic, not before the pandemic. Because I know a lot of people did the pandemic pivot where they were like, actually, I hate what I do or whatever, and fall into something else. So I kind of assumed it was the same for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was in a way that it's now become my career versus just a day job. But I don't think I would have had the confidence to get into training people online if I hadn't had experience training people in person. That
Yeah,
was, I
that's
was
fair.
working in fitness for about 2 years before that. So I felt like I had my feet under me at least. I definitely have learned more in the past 5 years than I did in those two, especially because only having a screen between you means your communication skills have to
Oh yeah,
level
you
up
have to
big
be on.
time.
It's a whole different ballgame.
But yeah, being in the room with people definitely I think is the best way to learn when you're lucky enough to have that opportunity. So
Absolutely. So now I'm curious about because what limited knowledge I have about dance and especially ballet are the horror stories
I
I
feel
hear
like you're
about.
selling yourself
Yeah.
short here. You're an amazing dancer. I feel like you're really
Oh,
selling yourself short here with the dance knowledge. I know it's not
I meant
ballet, but still.
no. Yeah, no. It's a different vibe. Because what I've seen and what I know is the bad stuff about ballet when you're growing up as a kid and everyone's telling you have to be tiny and small and this and that and the third. So that is what I'm like familiar with. Like if you want to be a ballet dancer, like here's an eating disorder. Like that's the vibe that I have learned from people I know that do it and whatever. So it's kind of
No, that's right.
interesting. Yeah. It's kind of interesting for you to go the whole other direction. And
Yeah. I mean, I it's definitely reactionary. And there's a lot that I've learned from ballet that I value and respect, and there's a lot that I received accidentally that I will work through in therapy until the day that I die. And I had it pretty light. Like I did classical Russian ballet. I was not doing like competition dance. That's a whole other world with whole other pressures, but like I was studying ballet as an art form. When it came time to like transition into taking it more seriously, it was like, okay, you can quit school, be homeschooled, and
oh,
pursue ballet full time, or you can go to regular high school and like try to have friends, which I don't know how successful I was at that, but I was like, I think I kind of want to try to be normal. And like, I do not have the greatest natural facility for ballet. Like, pursuing this as a career was not, in retrospect, like not really an option for me. Maybe if I had trained full time, had trained more seriously, but like musical theater was always the venue that I was going to go down. And having that quote unquote classical training is a huge asset when it comes to other styles of performance when they're looking for someone who like looks like they do ballet. When it comes to learning some other styles of dance, a lot of which are utilizing a similar vocabulary or completely reactionary to ballet. But of course, that the classical training that you're receiving pedagogically, like everything about ballet is like colonialism and patriarchy in action. Like ballet as an art form comes from the courts, French courts. I'm going to butcher this. I think it's Louis the 14th. That sounds right.
I mean,
Was he the Sun King?
I'm just
But
gonna say you're correct. I don't know.
it
Sure.
was an art form that was associated with sex workers in the French courts and meant to sort of entertain and charm the the lords of the courts. And it has now we see it as sort of a, I think, stick up your ass kind of rigid like old people thing. But it was originally like very titillating and very
Oh, that's interesting.
coquettish, and all of the so the base of ballet is meant to make somebody look as attractive as possible.
Right.
Right? Everything is done to show off the body, and because we live in the world that we live in, that is about how small and pale and frail and delicate and
Yeah.
all the things that we associate with traditional femininity, that is both packed into the very inception of ballet, and also because now we view ballet as this sort of like high class, exclusive, traditionalist thing. I do think that so many of our beauty standards are at least directly like correlated and inspired by, if not like taken directly from, because we're just taking them also from patriarchy and whiteness and
Right.
capitalism and all of those
So you've
things.
got to be thin, you got to be slim, you got to be flexible, you have to be graceful, you have to be, yeah.
You can't escape it. Like that is not just, oh, something sneaky that like accidentally worked its way into ballet. Like that is what ballet is
It's
as an
not
art
sneaky.
form. And it's also these, it's also a really beautiful form of artistic expression. It can be really
Absolutely.
moving. It is athletic achievement to like the highest degree, but it
Absolutely.
is just steeped in inextricably like mushed into all these horrible ideals that we're
Yeah.
hopefully trying to move away from a little bit.
So
And
it's
you'll
pretty
hear people
wild
say
that you
like
started
ballet
that
is
from
the
3.
foundation of dance. It's not. Yeah, right? Yeah, as a toddler being
Ballet
told how
is the
exactly to hold your
foundation.
hands.
Yeah, that's
It's
tough.
not, absolutely. But
Um,
that's what's been like baked into any form of dance training. You'll hear that so much and it's not true.
that's very
Like,
interesting.
yeah.
I find that
Yeah.
very interesting. There are a lot of great accounts that talk about dance in general. And there's one that I follow called Know Your Caribbean, and they'll show a lot of dances. Like, there's a dance people are doing in Guadeloupe, and here's like a dance that's in Africa, and look how it's connected. So I thought that's pretty awesome and cool. But when you're talking about the history of ballet and whatnot, it's interesting because I think about all dance forms like this is cute, this is nice. But like if you showed somebody the Know Your Caribbean page and like these dances, they're gonna be like, well, that's not real art, right? Like that's ballet is the real art, right? So it is very much colonial and all the fun things that we hate to see. And then somehow that gets decided to be the proper art form, the respectable art form, you know? It's just interesting.
Yes.
But anyways, I'm glad that you as a 3-year-old did not get totally built
We did.
into the propaganda and whatnot. I'm just curious what if it was like, were you in it and you were always like, this is dumb? Or did something happen that snapped you out of it? Because when I was a kid, I was in baton twirling. And when I tell you, I couldn't stand it. I thought it was stupid. I was like, I'm 5. Why am I wearing red lipstick? Like, it was dumb. And my mom wanted me to love it, and she took me everywhere. When I tell you, I never practiced. Ever. And you know,
That
by
was
the
me
time
with
you
piano.
never practice, and by the time you hit like 6, you're supposed to be at least able to like flip the thing in the air and spin around twice and catch it, whatever that was called. I couldn't do that. They had to make a separate class for the older kids that sucked. And I was in that class. And I always thought it was dumb. I always thought I didn't look like anybody else. I always thought like I don't belong here. So like they never got me, right? But society and other things got me in other ways. But like that program was just like no thank you. So I'm just curious if it was like that for you, or was there a moment that you were like, actually, this is stupid? And we're talking
I
about body
mean,
image
it's hard to.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. No, we can. Yeah, let's get right into the body image of it all. Because the problem is, like, with ballet, I still don't think it's stupid. I still feel that, like, tug. Like, the reason I begged to be in ballet classes, and it was just when I was little, it was like the thing that clicked with me more than anything, because it's like, oh, they're Disney princesses, and then they're literally flying. That's crazy. And then it's all of the ballet stories that the most famous ballets are based on are like so dark, like grim fairy tales dark. So it's just the perfect mix for like a weird little girl to be like, yes, I do want to be the death princess who gets like thrown around across the stage. That looks awesome. Like I was obsessed with it. And that's still, that the theatricality of ballet and like the magic of ballet, you can see something that you love that has a whole host of issues in
Right.
it's great in theory, not so great in practice. But being a kid growing up in a ballet class in front of a big old mirror with a bunch of other girls your age standing there in practically nothing. And of course, like anyone who's teaching ballet has been steeped in this ideology for their entire lives, which
Right.
I think there is, just in general, there is pushback now for the way teachers talk to students. And I was lucky to have a lot of good teachers, and I was also had a lot of very serious teachers who maybe like shouldn't have been let around children, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
they're also then they've received this indoctrination and they've dealt with teachers who are 10 times worse than what they're saying to you. So, grain of salt with everything. But in ballet, when I think this exists in fitness everywhere, obviously, but because ballet is not considered a sport, it's not taught and received like a sport.
Right.
So there's no tangible end goal besides an invented form of perfection. You are the product.
Right.
So your body is spoken about in a very frank and public way. And because ballet standards, like the amount of turnout you should have, the amount of extension, like how high your legs should be able to get, how bendy your feet are, how flexible your shoulders are, lots of things. Like there are a lot of standards that don't really have to do with the same like thin white standards as beauty standards, but they are received as the same thing in the teaching environment because teachers will look at students and go, "Oh, you look like a ballerina and you don't."
Right.
And
Like,
that's not true.
it's made up and they decided what's correct and what's not.
Exactly. And especially with artistic endeavors where the teacher is not necessarily practiced in the art of teaching, they are good at the art, which often, if they are high level, came to them very naturally. So now
Yeah.
you have someone who's going, just do it like I do it because it's easy. And they are not equipped with the skills to
Yeah. I mean,
teach.
same vibes of everything. People that are like, it's great that you won a national championship in powerlifting. That doesn't make you a good coach. Like,
Yeah,
it's two
I
separate
genuinely
things.
think the saying like those who can't do teach. I think the saying should be like those who can do probably should not teach.
Yeah.
Probably keep them away from children.
Probably chill for a little bit. Probably take take
just
a beat.
Yeah, go find a beach somewhere or something, or like pick up a a hobby you're bad at. That would be probably more beneficial to you. But, in dance where you age out of a career quite quickly and then teaching becomes the option that's available.
Gotcha. So how
you're
was it
dealing
that
with-
you? Oh, my bad. It lagged for a second.
No, no,
You
no.
were still talking. Yeah. So how was it that you in this environment were you always like sitting there watching the teachers critique people's bodies and thinking that's stupid, or was there a moment that you were like, I don't think
no,
this is
I
good?
was in it.
Okay.
I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I think there were a few moments when I remember one summer I went to a pretty intensive ballet camp, and probably the most talented person there was like quote unquote big by ballerina standards, like insane, not even like a plus size or fat person, like just quote unquote, I'm doing big air quotes just so you know if you're not watching this, like a big ballerina, too big to be a ballerina. And I remember just being like, it's so unfair that she's so obviously the most talented person in the room, and yet, excuse me, I'm gonna cough. And yet she's not taken as seriously as these dancers who have quote unquote a better facility, a more natural dancer's body.
Yeah.
Like she is the more talented person.
Yeah.
So I think there were probably some moments like that were a little bit of a crack in the facade of like, wait, that's not lining up because it's not actually about who is the best artist, the most expressive dancer, the most talented athlete. Now it's just about who looks good in the costume on stage, and
Yeah.
good
And
according to
that's
whose
not
standards.
really
Why?
making sense.
Yeah, why are these adults lining us up to be like, oh, I like the way you look? That's not great.
Yeah, that's pretty strange. Pretty strange. I mean, it's small moments like that that, like you said, a crack in the facade. And I still remember one of my first cracks because I was, I mean, I didn't like baton twirling, fine. Generally speaking, I just don't like people telling me how to perform femininity. And I think as a kid, that was my thing. Like, don't, if I want to wear a dress, let me wear a dress, but don't tell me I have to. Okay? And don't tell me I have to wear this color lipstick and glitter and what. If I want to, I'll do it. So that was kind of more the vibe, honestly. It wasn't really like a body shaming or whatever experience, but like growing up, society has everybody's thin, everybody's small, and my own family obviously enforced that. Like growing up, my mother was always on a diet, forever. So I was in the YMCA. We had a family plan, and my brothers would play basketball, hit the gym, and I would take the cardio classes. I take the spin class, I take the Zumba. And then one day I was walking out of those classes and like I saw this the only trainer that wasn't rail thin, probably wasn't plus size, probably what my size is now, but to me huge at the time because everyone was real thin. And then she was just standing there talking to somebody, not even me, and was like, "Oh yeah, I lift weights and I have muscles. Just because I got fat, you might not be able to tell that much, but I'm strong." And I walked away from eavesdropping on this conversation like, I guess I could lift weights and see if I get muscles. And then that's like, it's just one little thing. It just becomes something big. Because she wasn't even talking to me. It had nothing to do with me. But it just put a little seed. It just planted a seed like, oh, I could move differently. I don't have to do just cardio. Because I didn't enjoy that. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't a great escape from real life. It was punishment. So that was my like breakaway from the matrix.
Yeah. What were those cardio classes sort of your first foray into sport of any kind? What did it look like from there?
Yeah, that was my first level of activity. And then in high school, my mother wanted me to be a cheerleader. Instead, I chose to play soccer and flag football. And that kind of shaped a lot for me also. In middle school, I didn't have the gall to join anything, but in high school, somehow I did. But the interesting thing is, first of all, I joined soccer only because my mom wanted me to be a cheerleader and my dad loves basketball. And so I said, forget both of you. I'm going to play soccer. The theme of my life. So I played soccer and that was fun. And that's only one season. So I was like, oh, I want to do something else. And I just picked up flag football. The great thing about the flag football experience is that literally I was the only feminine presenting person. Every single person on that team was a stud through and through. So it was like a whole nother experience of interacting with people that I would have never interacted with in my like nerdy magnet honor roll classes. So none of them were talking about like, oh my God, do you want to split a donut with me? You know, like nobody was in this high school like, oh, what kind of dress are you going to wear for prom? They were just like, yo, what's up?
Yeah.
That was
It
it.
presents to you like different options of figuring out your own identity of what's the pinnacle of this experience, because I've talked about this before and it's one of my more like floaty ideas, but I think tying our identity so intensely to the way we choose to move our bodies can really trip us up, right? Like being like, I'm a person that goes to the gym is, I think that can be helpful. I've heard that framed as advice for beginners in terms of like embracing a lifestyle change, yada, yada, yada. But I think when you are programmed to an all or nothing mindset, when you struggle with overdoing things, when you struggle with self-punishment or self-criticism, aligning your identity with this is the thing that I do, and if I do not do this thing, I'm a failure, can be not awesome for your brain. So I feel like growing up and being sort of categorized into these activities, you're introduced to the platonic ideal of what a ballerina is, of what a baton twirler is, of what a flag football player is. And if you switch between those categories and you're introduced to sort of a new archetype, it can be helpful for actually letting your brain develop into like, oh, I can kind of piece together how this suits me and not just aim to be that person. Does that make sense?
No, that's real. That's real. I mean, because essentially the reason that my mother wanted me to be a cheerleader is because they're cute, right? They're classy. They don't really throw their butts around and whatever. It's like super,
Docile.
super prim and pure, So it's like that was the kind of person she wants me to be. And if that's the kind of person you're going to be, then this is the activity you should be doing. So it very much does fit that because we do have the narrow mindset because of the systems of what a person should look like for each activity.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. So being in the flag football team and hanging out with a bunch of studs, which my mother has probably never even talked to a masculine presenting femme in her entire life, right? Like she doesn't even know what that is. And here I am just hanging out with 12 of them and we're just like chilling. There's no body talk. There's no talking about boys. Like it is a space where men are decentered, which like in retrospect is honestly revolutionary. We just existed. It was amazing. It was great. It was a good time. But then after that YMCA situation, that was actually somewhere high school, college thread is when I started lifting. And that's how I got into powerlifting and then competing powerlifting and then strongman and competing strongman. So those arenas are even wilder because the powerlifter archetype is still thin, but like shredded, like visible hamstring striations. You know what I mean? And if you don't have those, like you're not a real power lifter. So, and you always have to be cutting for a weight class. Like you can't just show up and lift. You have to cut for the weight class. So that's the body type for powerlifting. And so that was probably the point of my life where all of like body confusion and not knowing how I want to exist in my body finally blew up because then I really was disordered eating and always worried about like, oh, my hamstrings don't look that good. And like always watching the number on the scale. I was counting macros. I was always cutting for whatever. Why? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I was good at it, but like it really wasn't necessary to cut. I could have just lifted at whatever I weighed. But because of, if you're a powerlifter, you should be doing these things. So I did those things. And that took a lot of fun out of it.
Yeah, because you turn it from, I feel like it's the ultimate like intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Like, is it about showing up and doing the activity and performing the thing you've trained so hard to do and enjoying the experience of that? Or is it about literally performing the quality of being a power lifter, performing the quality of being, whatever activity you're doing, like legitimizing yourself through playing the part? And that's the easiest way to ruin the joy in an activity and to like disembody yourself.
Absolutely. And the equivalent of the everyday person doing that would be the losers that post things like, I've seen this guy go to the gym every day I'm there and he looks exactly the same. Okay? Because you decided in your head, if you are a gym goer, that means you are also trying to attain thinness or some sort of certain aesthetic. And if they didn't do that, then you have failed as that identity. You can't be a gym goer, which is very rigid.
Why would you show up to the gym every day? Certainly not to show up to the gym every day.
Yeah.
Certainly not to do going to the gym. Like, people are so, I feel like even in that simple statement, like, there's a whole unacknowledged set of rigid expectations about why the person who's, probably tweeting that, like, what they expect of themselves. Because then if that's truly a weird activity for that person to show up to the gym and have no noticeable physical changes, like, you've just told on yourself. Like, every accusation is a confession.
Right. And also,
you don't know that person's goals. You don't know the person's body history. You don't know what they do for fun. You don't know why they're there. Shut up.
Yeah. And nobody turns around and says, why are you staring at them? That's weird behavior.
Why are you clocking somebody else
Why
at the gym?
are you tracking someone else's activities? It's weird. It's giving weird. But it's interesting because after powerlifting, I went to strongman. And that transition had to do with when my mom was in the hospital for leukemia and when she was passing, because powerlifting is like a dedication. Okay, it's like 3 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. If you have a meet coming up, there's nothing else going on in your life. So that wasn't working because I spent every night in the hospital. So then I started doing strongman, which is also great because you could get a lot of rage out because you're throwing stones and stuff, and you're meant to bang everything. No, there's no grace. There's no like pulling yourself together. Everybody's shouting and screaming. Just, caveman energy. So it's interesting because that really suited me at that moment of my life. And it's also interesting because the body stuff kind of just faded away. Because number one, I looked at what I was doing and I was just like, we need to stop doing this. I just looked at myself, had a Michael Jackson moment. This is not working. And then number two, once you get the strong man, they're like, oh yeah, so you're gonna bulk up? You're gonna get bigger, right? You're gonna compete at heavyweight? What is that, 20 pounds? Yeah, just add some creamer to your milkshake. Add some creamer to your protein shake every night. Bulk up. Like, complete opposite.
Yeah. A real mental flip. Yeah. I mean, as long as you're cool to go there, like, I also, like, was my mom's primary caregiver when she had ovarian cancer for about 3 years and was pretty independent and functional for most of that time. But then I was living with my parents when she went into hospice and became her primary caregiver. And that watching the human body that you came from disintegrate in front of you is, I think, maybe, if I can be really morbid, like, I think that saved my life. Like, it is the most intensive and disturbing, like, body image work you could ever do.
Yeah. It's like anything
so
could be
much
taken away from you in a second.
Yeah, this doesn't last, and also, like, this doesn't last in the sense of becoming aware of your own mortality, and then also, like, this doesn't matter because when you're going through that, everything else that's non-essential just, like, melts away. Anything that is not directly contributing to you staying upright is just useless. And this was after I had started working in fitness, and so much of this will be a brief diversion. It'll probably sound a little callous to go here, but let's go here for just a second. Like, so much of what I had learned to love about lifting weights and about working in a more masculine gym environment was exploring that side of myself that was so anti-ballet, was so anti how I grew up in musical theater,
Right.
having my body critiqued by, like, older men and told whether I was marketable or not, like, all of these things. All of a sudden it became like, okay, what can you do? Can your body hold up to this? Can you compete? Can you lift something heavier? Can you get bigger? Can we see your muscles? Like, that was so healing in that time. And then it all just, like, melted away with caring for my mom, because it was just like, all of a sudden I can pick her up. Not because I'm so strong, because she is so delicate. You know, can I move slow and gentle enough in my body to not hurt her? Can I, like, carry her to the bathroom? Can I, like, bend over this bed and hold her up so I can, like, change her? Like, all of these things that were purely about function and at the same time watching that function be taken away from
Yeah.
someone who literally is, like, you know, that's my mom, that's my analog. I'm watching it happen and I'm imagining it happen to myself, because how could you not? But, like, my body all of a sudden it's so clear that that's my tool for being able to show up and do this thing that's the most important thing I've ever done. And also, it doesn't matter because someday it will be me in that bed. So it's not like being able to be the caregiver was a huge gift, and also it's just ultimately like a blip in time of being able to be the person who can use their body for that function. You know, because so frequently when we go down the path of, like, oh, well, don't focus on how it looks, focus on what your body can do. It's like, well, that's that's great and that's a good step, but then yeah, for right now,
Yeah.
for until you get sick, for until you get injured, for until there are more important things. Like we're all only, when I first heard the phrase, and I think it was probably, I always try to cite, but sometimes it gets jumbled up here. I think it was probably from Imani Barbarin, Crutches and Spice. But the first time I heard the phrase, like, everyone is only temporarily able bodied, you are pre disabled. It was like, oh, okay. Okay, yes, that integrates these different experiences. That makes sense to me. But you know, I've never been more grateful for having like for being bigger than somebody else. For being like, okay, if my strong legs can support me, my strong arms can hold something. Like I can, my body is physically capable of like controlling itself, moving slow and gentle enough to do this. And also like I don't get to keep this very long.
Yeah. And we don't know for how long. It's very much puzzling to me in the way that my mom's situation was quick. She got leukemia October. She actually got diagnosed the day I was competing at a USAPL's national event. And everybody that knew me could not understand why I bombed out that day. But I literally got the call while I was doing my squat warm-ups. I did horrible that day. So like it's interesting to me because that was October, and then she spent pretty much the rest of her life in the hospital, and I was there every night. And she passed the next January. And when she passed, I looked at my life and I was like, okay, so I could lose this in 3 months. Things gotta go. This toxic boss has gotta go. Okay, this body image, this is stupid. It's gotta go. We've gotta move on. And so it's just puzzling to me that people can watch such a drastic, unexpected change happen to somebody and their life stays the same. Like, were you not watching what I was watching? Where were you? I don't get it. So it's absolutely wild to me because everything is temporary. And so many people ask questions and they just had to know, what is it? Why? Why does she have that kind of leukemia? What is it? Why? Sometimes there's no reason, babe. You can get hit by an 18-wheeler tomorrow and it's a wrap. Sometimes there's no reason. So while we're here on this dusty planet, we might as well just do what we can, right? You know, as cliche
Yeah,
as it sounds.
Everyone seeks, like it's weird to see the myth of meritocracy make its way over into your literal human body. That's like, I mean, I'm a very secular person, but like it's a miracle that this exists and functions, you know? And so to see people search for answers about why somebody got sick and died, like,
is it because she was too stressed? Is it because she didn't eat organic? Is it what was something wrong?
And it's like, no, babes, bad things can happen to you. And it doesn't matter how good or bad of a person you were. It doesn't matter how healthy acting or non-healthy acting you were. Like it's people really need answers to cope with just sort of like the randomness of tragedy. Yeah. And now I'm I'm going too far, maybe down a path away from fitness stuff. But it really, like, if you are able, I think there's a reason, like, when people have a parent or someone that close to them pass, like, we joke that it's a club, but it really does, if you are present for it and if you are open to it and you are not just like suppress, don't feel this, it really flips your world around. Like, it really
Absolutely
can be a life-changing perspective shift. And that doesn't mean it's, you know, I'm getting dangerously close to being like, everything is a blessing. No, it sucks. It sucks. I don't want that to have happened, but there's a lot you gain from that kind of perspective that I think often, like, if people aren't confronted with their own mortality that way, I think dealing with like maybe a chronic illness, like dealing with your own breakdown of function can probably have a similar effect. Just having to like grasp your own mortality a little earlier in life maybe than you would
Absolutely. And I think that also the way that my mom passed in so quickly and knowing that she was fine before, and that also helped with where me coming along in my own disability identity because I wasn't always chronically ill. That started coming out of nowhere. And I was still very much in the every individual choice I make can make me healthy. You know, I was still into the healthism. So I still didn't understand, well, why isn't my body working? Like, I'm doing everything correct here. What's going on? And then I watched my mom pass away in, what, 3 months? And I'm like, oh, there's no answer to that question. We're just going to move on from this. It just is. And I mean, it's neat and tidy to categorize things in our brains, and that's great for children, but we're not children anymore, right? Like, it's great for a kid who can't
Yeah.
understand that mom is mom and also Sarah, right? You're 3 years old, you can't grasp that. That's hard. But once we get to adulthood, we have to start separating, like, if you're disabled, it means you must look like this, right? Like, if you lift weights, you must live like, grow up. What are we doing here? We're
Yeah.
adults. Why are we still in the black and white? This is not first grade.
Yeah. Yeah. That's this is not my favorite instinct when it comes to discussing grief stuff, but I just want to say like that's really brutal and really unfair, and I'm sorry and thank you for sharing that cuz yeah. Do you want to tell me something about your mom? Can I hear something about your mom?
Something about my mom. So for my powerlifting stuff, again, remember she wanted me to be dainty and cute.
Mhm.
She hated the powerlift. She never came to any of my meets. All she wanted is that I called her after it was done and I told her I was okay. Not if I did well, not if I won, just I'm fine. It happened. We're good. And that was her extent of her involvement. And you know, at least once a month she had to let me know your uterus is going to fall out.
No. No. Oh, mom.
Yeah. So, but it's really funny though because before she got sick, I tried to figure out ways that I could be active with her and move around. So we did like a little tour of everything I knew, and then it turned out she actually really liked yoga, which was
Oh.
so random as heck. And I mean the physical poses of yoga because yoga is more than just doing a split, right? So it turned out she actually
Yeah.
liked doing that. So we started doing that together before she got sick, and that was a fun time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's sounds like could have been even a more fun bonding experience. I'm sorry you were robbed of more of that. It's I think okay, I think if I ever wrote a book someday, it would be about like moms and daughters and bodies, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe I have hope that like, you know, however many years we have left on this planet as like humankind, not as you and me. Like I hope that we are moving away from this being the common experience, but like having boomer moms, so much of that shit that we learned is just, I think, sort of passed down in osmosis from people who had it way worse, which doesn't excuse behavior, but it explains it.
Yeah.
And this was part of, not to cycle back to cancer stuff, but something that was really a frame for me growing up, a very integral part of my early body image experience is that I very quickly outgrew my mom. She was teeny tiny, like 100 pounds, 5'1", right? And so by the time I was 12, I was bigger than her. And, you know, she would pull up clothes and be like, you're never going to fit into this. You're just a lot bigger than I am, which is true, but hard to hear when you're 12. And all, you know, I think being small was a quality that was so praised in her for such a long time, that it became something valued. And then when she got sick and she started dropping weight because you're sick and you're going through chemotherapy and you're controlled poisoning your body for the hope that you will survive, people would be like, oh my God, you look great. What's your secret? You're losing weight. Like that was the first instinct. even when she lost her hair and she was wearing a ratty ass looking wig, people would be like, but you look amazing. And that also was a wild flip in my brain of like how, even from people who knew she was sick, how is that a balm in any way that you're getting smaller? That's the first step in disappearing. And that's not to say that like losing weight or getting smaller is always a bad thing, but just it is so the default for us to praise, even in people who are nearly strangers. It's why I'm so adamant about like never commenting on body change in any direction, because you just don't know.
You
And then
don't know.
to watch her go from like losing a little bit of weight because she was getting sick to losing all of her body weight and realizing the things that like oh, your arms are so small, your arms are so thin, the things that very quickly go from being praised to like, if you touch this person you might break her. Like it really it's almost too obvious, you know. It's almost like too good of a way to prove a point. But
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
it's fascinating watching people of a certain age really just value taking up as little space as possible above all else, value being docile and fragile and
Yeah.
small above
And
all else. And I do
amenable,
think like,
amenable to the male gaze.
yes, very dainty, very ladylike. Is
Yeah.
it so charming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my mom too. Very prim and proper. It didn't help that she was bougie and like, you know, grew up in Haiti with like a 3-car garage and maids and all that stuff. So like bougie as hell on top of that. So, you know, like I wasn't even she didn't even like me painting my nails when I was in middle school because prostitutes paint their nails. Like, you're not allowed to wear anklets. You know, like, just rules that are just so made up and far-fetched. They're like, where did you get that from, even? You know, we have bank accounts now, right? Like, what is this about? Like, why are we still doing
Yeah.
this?
Where did this come from? Who taught you this? Because
Yeah.
it's not natural. It's
Yeah.
not like it's ingrained in there so deeply.
But it's interesting because she was always like very much pushing that, but then would also do things that were the complete opposite. So like my experience with my actual mother is not negative at all. My other family members were way weirder when it comes to bodies. Like I have an aunt, when I went through puberty, she reached in my shirt and pulled my titty out and was like, "Oh, you have breasts now." Like it was weird. Okay.
That's assault.
It was
Yeah.
it's a lot to this day. It's a lot.
Oy.
And to this day I don't understand it. Why are we still doing this? We have bank accounts now. Our bodies are no longer forms of currency. Why are we still doing this? I don't get it.
Yeah, your appeal to the widest possible swath of men is no longer inextricably tied to your survival. We don't
Yeah.
need to worry about this so much.
We'll be fine. Like we'll be
Yeah.
okay. It's okay.
We can start a business. We can drive a car. Yeah.
At least in this country. I mean, but
Yeah,
you know,
for now. Knock on everything.
at least for now.
In March 2025, these are still possibilities that are open to us at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. I think the other part of slightly circling back to the grief part of it, I think the other part of what that did for my movement journey and also when I got divorced is kind of reacquaint myself with like what consistency means. What does it mean to like, oh, okay, I'm in a season of working out like this right now. I'm in a season where I can't think past 20 minutes. I'm in a season where, you know, I want to just slam things. So it really helped me because I never thought about movement in that way before. But it really helped me figure out like, you know what? I can't focus on 2-hour powerlifting sessions right now. I got to think about packing my bag so I go sleep at the hospital, right? Like I can't think about, like when I got divorced, I'm like, I can't even focus on loading a plate and putting weights on a barbell. Like I'm just going to go on an angry walk for an hour. So I would say grief helped me shape what consistency means and understanding that it's the effort that consistency should be about and not necessarily the result or the yield of it, right? It's like the intention. Am I always committed to
Hmm.
something in general? So, what do you think
I
consistency means?
oh, I mean, yeah, consistency is a beast. It's one of those words where we throw it around and you want to like grab people on the internet by the shoulders and shake them and be like, words have meanings. What do you mean? Like um yeah, consistency, I always think just about zooming out and like you said, consistency and effort, and not effort as in output, but effort as in intention. If the effort is if the commitment is I am going to take care of myself as best I possibly can, I am going to put a certain amount of effort, 1% of what I put out in a day has to go back into taking care of me. And then that looks different every day based on meeting your own needs, which is difficult to do because we're not taught to do that. A big shift for me was in we talk about like joyful movement. People love that. What do you like to do? What brings you happiness? What are you having fun doing? And I go back to that a lot, but reframing that for not just, oh, this makes me happy. I'm doing this because I love it. I'm doing this because I show up and it feels amazing. But more so embodied movement, like showing love to my body doesn't always mean being happy, smiley, loving what I'm doing. It's that I care for myself. It's like I think a lot about like bell hooks talking about how we just assume people are born with the capacity to love, but love is like a skill, love is an action, love is not just like a feeling that you're
Yep.
feeling. So showing up in a way of what do I need today? Do I need to express something? Do I need to feel held? Do I need to like move energy out? Do I need to pour energy in? Do I need to go smooth brain and work towards a goal? Do I need to do something that is engaging in more ways than one? Do I need to be alone? Do I need to be around people? Like that is, even if it doesn't feel like, ah, I'm having the best workout ever. Today's the best day of my life. It still feels like love because you are taking the action
It's an
of
action.
care towards yourself. And that was a big shift for me. I got into running for a while because all I wanted to do was like escape my problems and like push the world away. And it was like, well, I don't love running and I don't feel it's happiness is not the emotion that I'm expressing, but it feels like care because I'm expressing the thing that I like really desperately need because
Yeah.
my body's telling me this is what I want. So that feels like joyful, loving movement, even though it's not like I love my run. I get dressed up and I make a video about it and I have my happy playlist. It's like me like snot crying on the West Side Highway in the rain, just like, but that's, it worked. It worked because the effort, the intention was we do the thing that is caring for me having this experience in this human body. And that takes a lot of, you know, all the things that go into that of me having decent running form, of having learned how to do that, me having the equipment and a safe place to do that and a schedule that allows
Yes.
for that. Like there are so many barriers to get through before you're at that place, but like that is in a perfect world, that's what I wish for everybody, to have those things available so that you can
Yeah.
use movement as like I'm not well trained in like somatic practices, like that is, a legitimate form of therapy, but I think it's borderline that. It's a little DIY somatics of what can I do in this moment to meet my own needs in this human body.
Yeah, it's the bare minimum. It's the bare minimum starter
Yeah.
kit of therapy is like, what is your body feeling and what is it telling you it wants? Which, honestly, I say bare minimum like as a joke, but that can be very big because we are constantly disembodied and told what's appropriate emotions in certain circumstances and what movement should be for what. So it can be very hard to just be like, what does my body need today? And that's not an easy thing to do. It requires introspection. It requires interoception. Like, you have to understand your emotions flowing through you as like, a message. You get the message, bring it back, and then scan your body and be like, what is the message telling my body? That's hard. That's not easy, but that is like the bare minimum therapy starter kit.
Yeah, they don't make Duolingo for that.
Yeah, they don't.
That's advanced stuff. And then
Yeah.
also, like, to not get so attached to, okay, well, this worked for me for 3 months, so I'm a runner now, and I have to attach myself to that. But
Yeah,
to go, okay,
understand
I needed
what's
that in that
what's
moment,
a
and
season.
maybe it's not interesting anymore. And
Yeah.
it being interesting and appealing turns out a big deal to me, like, and for some people it's not. For some people the habit is more important to them, the routine. But
Right.
we're not, like you said, we're not taught to value that, to value our own experience of this is what's important to me, or this is what is useful and caring to me.
Absolutely, because I was going on some hard, heavy speed walk, like Olympic speed walking, hips swiveling after my divorce. Just, and my dog was like, yeah, this is great. And then once I got past that and I was leisure, first of all, that would be like an hour, which is, when I think about that now, is nuts. Like, I could barely get through 15 minutes with this dog, and I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go back inside. Let's wrap this up. Find a spot to piss in. Let's wrap it up. So I think about that now. Like, I did what for how long? But it worked. That's what I needed at the time. I don't want that now. I don't even like hiking or doing any of that stuff. Not for me. So,
do you have and you don't need to share the emotional side of it if you don't want to, but do you have a form of movement that feels really like embodied now? What phase are you in?
Well, I will always love lifting weights, but how I lift it and like the mode and what I'm into is gonna change. So like powerlifting, I was very much squat, bench, deadlift. And then strongman, you kind of open up to just weird movements. So I'm always in some way lifting weights, but that's not like, I don't know, that's like my comfort food. Like that's my plate of mashed potatoes and whatever comfort food you think of. I don't know why that came up in my brain, but yeah. But as far as like doing a movement and feeling like, ooh, I'm home. Right now for me, that's pole dancing.
I've loved seeing little bits of your pole dance journey.
Yeah, it's a
That's
good time.
awesome. How did you get into pole dance?
I walked by a random studio and they had orchids in the window. Orchids are my mom's favorite flower. So obviously I went in. And then the pole teacher's like, hi, I'm Orchid. We teach classes here. And it's a black woman-owned studio. I was like, oh. And I was like, okay. How much does it cost? When do they start? And she was like, tomorrow. And all right, I'll be back tomorrow. And that was that.
That's amazing. What
Yeah,
a little like kismet moment.
That's pretty much how I've been living my life when it comes to movement too. And we're almost at an hour here, just FYI, so we could chat for a little bit longer, but not for 10 years.
I think
Thank
that's
you
why
for joining us,
thinking about
JJ
mashed
Chocolate.
Potatoes.
Because I'm hungry? I don't know. But
It's
that's how that's how I
Potato
approach
o'clock.
my movement. Any form of potato is amazing. But that's how I approach my movement, is like, I just want to try this random thing and I'll do it. Like, there's no thought to it because why not? Right? Like,
Yeah.
What do I have to
You
lose
could get
here?
hit by a bus tomorrow. What's the point?
What's the point? So that's
Yeah.
how I ended up doing swing dance. Like, I learned how to swing dance. I know how to do Lindy Hop and like Balboa, which I've never heard of before in my life.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
look that up.
Yeah, it's fun, but that's it. They're just things that I just stumble onto, and I'm like, why not? Give it a go.
I feel like every time I see you posting what you're doing movement-wise online, it's something completely different. You're very much like a jack of all trades.
Yeah, it's very
Movement-wise.
random. And by the way,
Yeah.
for the people that say, what can't I do? Endurance sports. I'm just going to wrap that up for you right now. So there are things I definitely can't do. Because if it's longer than 10 minutes, no, it's not for me. But I think also the other big thing is like, I don't really care about looking silly or failing. Which
I think
unfortunately,
that's like a superpower.
I mean, I watched
Yeah.
my mom literally cease to exist in how many. Why do I care? Why would I care? Why would I care? If I go to a pole dancing class and you think I don't know how this works, why would I care? It doesn't change my life. It
Yeah.
doesn't pay my bills.
I'll survive.
I'll
I'll survive
survive.
looking a little silly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cringe. Who cares?
Yeah. Everything is cringe, and therefore nothing's cringe.
Yeah, it's like that meme that's like, I'm not afraid of being corny. I was born on the cob. Don't care.
I haven't
Don't
seen that one.
care. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm deep in there. Sorry. Deep in the internets.
No, I love it. You send me the best memes.
Yes. But I also want to bring, so this podcast is obviously the same, well, not obvious. If you didn't know, it's the same name as my book. But I also like, that is why my book has so much journaling and words in it. Because like everything that we talked about is related. Everything that we talked about is fitness. Because you can't just be like, I go into, like, this is not Severance. You don't just, your innie doesn't go to the gym and nothing else exists, right? Like, everything is with you at all times. And so we got to talk about everything.
Yeah. If you are listening to this and you haven't picked up the book, you should. Not just to read, but it is also like extremely practical. I think that is it fills such an important lacuna in the current web of resources, because there's a big wide gulch between this sounds awesome in theory and I want to care for myself in an embodied way, and I want to be flexible, and I want to like respond to my own needs in real time, and how do I like do that? How do I start there? How do I start at this high level stuff? And there are so many little practical tidbits and prompts and exercises and things that you can do to just check in like today, right now, without having years and years of experience in trial and error. Like, you're helping people skip the steps of figuring that out the hard way. I think that's really, really important. I think that's something like the sort of fitness counterculture, if I want to lump us all together, like can really struggle to do, because so much of what we talk about is like reactionary. It's something I really admire, when you can skip right to, here is a way to try to do this that might not harm you, without just being like, oh, you got harmed, here's a different thing. Like, just going right to like, here's something that's going to help you today. Because if you can give people just a little taste of a good experience of like, oh, this didn't feel like shit for once you feel that feeling of like, oh, I can care for myself and this doesn't have to be horrible, like, you'll never go back. It will take some time, but you're going to start moving in the right direction, because at a certain point that self-punishment hamster wheel is just going to become unbearable.
Yeah.
So,
and either
it's
it's
a great
going to
book.
become, thank you. I appreciate those
Go
words.
get it.
Those are great words. Somebody write that down. But yeah.
Is this thing on? Are we recording?
Are we recording? Did anyone hear that? All the nice words Laura said. But anyways, no, but that is pretty much the aim of the book. So like, I'm glad the message received, the message sent out is the message received, because that is the vibe. That is definitely the vibe. And so I feel like we had a great chit chat about ballet, how you almost might still be traumatized by it, sort of.
Ballet.
Working
what
through
didn't
it.
we hit? Body trauma, mom stuff, death.
Death, running phases.
I think we
well,
hit
mine was
everything.
speed walking though, but you know, same vibes.
I love it. I'm imagining you in a mall in like a Juicy Couture jumpsuit with hand waves.
Just
That's what I'm imagining.
boom,
I think
boom,
that's the
boom.
perfect like post-divorce rage outfit.
It
Personally.
it was a time. My dog loved it, but she does not like the happy me because happy me does not want to go on a walk. Yeah, a better mental health for me is not a great.
She'll
day for
live.
her. She'll live. She's not in the streets. She'll be fine. She'll be fine. But anywho, thanks for joining us, y'all. Folks on the live stream, if you're catching us on the recording, that's fine. I don't judge you, only a tiny bit, maybe a little. And that's okay. We can still be friends. We love you. Goodbye.
Bye. I'm going to keep doing this until I think the video's over.
Okay, it's over.